if wealth building is the goal, you can be very successful in any path, whether that's being the operator, whether that's being the funder, whether that's raising the capital for it.
Welcome to the Fully Funded Show. Whether you're a capital raiser, deal sponsor, fund manager, or LP investor, we've got the insights you need for investing success. Join Sam Silverman each week for expert interviews, insider tips, and strategies to fully fund your ventures. Let's go!
All right, we're back with a Fully Funded Show, this time with Aaron Shumaker. Aaron, thanks for coming on.
Hey, how's it going, Sam?
Good. You want to give the listeners a little bit of your background and kind of what you're working on now as well?
Awesome. I'll do my best to try and keep this to 30 or 45 seconds. So, ran a bank in college, maybe another story for another day. Was a Georgetown.
We can start
undergrad.
there. Dude, let's dive into that one. That's way cooler than a lot of stuff I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah. So I was at Georgetown, and the fourth or fifth day on campus, there were all these flyers all across campus that were like yellow. They stood out. It was like, come join the credit union, your ticket to Wall Street. I was a freshman, so I didn't know what Wall Street was, but I knew I wanted to be an investment banker, even though, I didn't know what it was until probably a month or two on the job. So I joined this student-run credit union that they had on Georgetown's campus. They managed about, when I was there, 12 million of customer deposits, all student-run. The only adult supervision was like a once-a-year annual exam from the NCUA. And so I joined this thing, largely, I think, because there was a girl I was interested in that was doing it. But that's another story, too, for another day. So anyway, they had about 150 part-time student volunteers. It was real work experience. So when you got the job interviews, you could actually talk about stuff you were doing versus getting somebody's coffee or making photocopies. So we had all the things you run into with a real business. The only thing we didn't have to deal with was, actually paying our interns. We paid them we had the best parties on campus, and we sent them to the best jobs after they graduated. But in the middle, everybody started as a teller, and you worked your way all the way up to being CEO. And that's what I was my last semester, my junior year, and the first semester of my senior year. So my story starts with running a student-run bank in college. So then
really cool. And that's about as good as you can get for cheap labor, right? How to go incentivize your employees in a big way, right? Parties, college credits, right? A resume story, which is awesome to go hear.
And the funny part was the acceptance rate at the credit union was like 7%. So you had about probably like 60. Yeah, we had, was it like 30 or 40 spots every year. And this was a couple of years after I left. It was like 5 to 7% of the people who applied were able to get non-paid internships at this place. And Georgetown had like 1,500 students per class. So it's kind of one of those like outliers, freak of nature type things, but it totally changed the trajectory of my, what I would end up doing. It was really entrepreneurial. So you got to make all these decisions. The whole place was yours to hopefully carry, for the 12 or 24 months that you were in charge of running it. And you kind of got out of it what you put into it. So you could make really big mistakes. You could change things, or you could kind of coast. It was really up to you. But, once you got into doing these interviews, which is what I went into it to try and get the job on Wall Street, and I checked that box, but I came out of it with really a cheat code experience running a business. If you go in, you work for somebody and you climb the corporate ladder, it's going to be 20 years before you're put in any sort of real leadership position. So, but you had to deal with all these things like hiring people, firing non-paid interns, dealing with, liquidity, dealing with how to invest money. So it was really just kind of this crazy experience. And I found out that I love being an entrepreneur from it, just kind of as an accident. So then I went to work, at Goldman Sachs. So I spent 2 years in their leveraged finance group. So we would do these $1 billion transactions. And I was, an analyst. So you're working the 18, 20-hour days, what they say and what the hours are definitely like that. You kind of don't really have much time to yourself. But it was an incredible experience. I loved working with all the smart people. And if I had, 10 different careers, if I was a career cat with nine career lives, staying at Goldman definitely would have been one of them. So we were helping companies, this is germane to kind of coming full circle to where we are now. We were helping companies raise billions of dollars to go buy companies. So we would work for private equity firms, would often be our clients, and they were looking to buy a company and they'd come to us to raise the funding. So we would be out raising funds from institutional investors that would write, on the equity side, they'd be writing 500 million to $1 billion checks for the bigger transactions. On the smaller transactions, it'd be, a small deal would be somewhere between 500 million and a billion. Big deal would be like 10 to 15 billion. So got, pretty early on experience and exposure to that whole game and what it's like to raise capital professionally and on a large scale. But that wasn't going to be my path. So I and another Goldman guy who was another Georgetown credit union guy, weren't in it for the maybe the certain way of getting wealthy, but you got to sort of invest the 15, 20 years and, would have been a great career, would have been super lucrative, but we had desire to take the entrepreneurial path. So in the time we didn't have, we were coming up with all sorts of different business ideas for different things to start. And we'd come up with maybe 15 or 20 really bad ideas. We were roommates at the time. So we'd kind of be ships passing at the night and we'd be emailing each other, kind of unintelligently through the Goldman email, as we would find out, at the time we were leaving to start our company. They actually do look at that and they do monitor it. But we were coming up with different ideas and we landed on starting a DIY home security company. So we created a company called FrontPoint and grew that from two dudes in a basement. So we moved back from New York to Washington, D.C. Another funny story, we had to break into my uncle's basement as our first act in D.C., starting a home security company. That was kind of ironic. But we grew this company from a startup, literally an idea on a napkin, to about 125 million of revenue when we sold. And this was all organic growth. So we didn't buy anything. We literally built it from scratch, had about 700 employees at our peak employee count. And we had to learn how to do everything from raising capital for a startup, managing people, building a product, kind of soup to nuts. And if I had to give advice to my 12-year-old business self or my 23-year-old business self, it would be buy a business. So some of the stuff you're doing, kind of helping folks raise capital for buying businesses is definitely where I would give entrepreneurs advice. Like starting something is a lot crazier than building something. So it's, for me, it's come all for full circle. But that was my next career step. So we ran FrontPoint for about a little over a decade, and then exited to private equity in the fall of 2020. And then that brings me to my current entrepreneurial journey. So I've essentially become private equity, and I took a very sort of full circle route to getting there. Most people that kind of went my track in the finance world would go work at an investment bank, and then they'd go work at a private equity firm, and they'd work their way up, and you'd end up, kind of doing the direct route. But I took the route through actually building a business, which I think has given me tons of leg up and sort of a cheat code or an advantage, as I'm a private equity investor at this point. So I'm doing a couple things now. I'm investing in service businesses. So starting and or buying and building home services businesses or different services businesses. So that's one vertical. And then the other vertical is real estate investing. There's a number of other things that sort of fill my investing vertical, but the two main things are service business investments and real estate investments where we're doing a lot of stuff with land. So we'll buy huge plots of land, we'll cut it up into smaller pieces, and then we'll subdivide it. So that's, maybe nowhere close to 30 seconds, but hopefully I didn't kill the whole interview with you know a super lengthy intro.
No, I love it. I think a topic we touch on really frequently on this show is just the education system in general, right? And I think what you did highlights how impactful getting exposure to entrepreneurship can be. Like if you go think back and if you didn't go into that banking program at Georgetown, right, and you weren't involved there, right, like, do you think you would have stayed that corporate route? And there's nothing wrong with being a corporate employee, right? Like it's a great path. It's a very secure path. It's a high likelihood, especially in that role, to be very wealthy over time. But it's also a high path of not owning your time, right? Like where are you calling in from right now?
Yeah, no, I'm calling in from Nantucket, Massachusetts. So I'm up here during the summer. So freedom is one of my uh, top 3 to 5 core values. I trade them, but freedom is definitely probably top three. So I don't know if I have no idea what my path would have been if the credit union weren't in that future. And it was kind of like, the question in college or either in college to go to college or not to go to college, or post college to go work for somebody or to go start a business or to pretty quickly do it thereafter. But it's that, doing it young and failing. Fortunately, we ended up being successful, but it wasn't through, a lot of sort of, failures in between to get there. But that early exposure to being involved, I think, in a small business is just critical, whether it's your business or whether it's somebody else's business. So I don't know where it would have ended up. It could have been a great professional career path, or it could have been the career path of being an entrepreneur. I'm pretty sure it would have involved creating a fund at some point, because this time
Sure.
freedom thing I can't shake. It'd be hard for me to sort of go back to take a corporate at this point. But different paths for everybody. They're all good.
So how do you think about it? Like I come from the corporate world as well, right? Entrepreneur in high school, built and sold my first company. Then nothing to the scale of what you built, but enough where it gave me some wiggle room, right? And out of college, I had no clue what I wanted to go do. I knew I wanted to work for myself at some point. And I'm like, okay, I'll go try and figure out how can I go make money in that period of time and learn people, went into sales, right? But you kind of think about people in these roles, whether corporate or entrepreneurial, and I feel like people fall into two camps. And I'm curious your thoughts on this. Like one being the stabilizer, right? Think of the upper middle manager at a corporate firm who can go drive outcomes for like within certain bounds, right? Versus the builder, right? Someone who has that entrepreneurial mindset who can go create something out of nothing. A very different type of people, and there's a place for both of them. Like, how do you think about those two different categories and people falling into those categories, and what life can go look like if you end up in the wrong one?
Yeah, I mean, I I've spent a ton of time, a ton of sort of internal soul searching. I've done tons of personal development, sort of all different realms. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I think what I've come to believe is, what what you love doing, and this isn't a follow your passion. It's sort of when you find yourself in those flow states, and when you find yourself in those I hate this states. That's kind of what I've gravitated towards, and I've found, I know that I'm more of I want to create something, I want to build something, I want to go really quickly, I want to do a lot of things, and that lends itself to being more of a builder, or in some of the other definitions or versions of this, they call that a visionary versus an operator, or a kind of the person that's, as you've called it, the integrator or the visionary. I think that's the EOS vernacular for it. And both, if your goal is building wealth, you can build wealth in both. If your goal is happiness and building wealth, I think it gravitates towards whatever you're more naturally good at, or you're more naturally good at, you know, systems and process and people and managing. If you're that upper middle manager, you're probably really well suited to step into a role where you're doing the same thing, but you know, being the CEO or the COO of one of these companies, if you're the visionary, you know, that's more, you're more likely to want to go bounce from thing to thing and have multiple. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
Yeah, no, no,
um,
you definitely are, and like it's something I think about a lot. I think people in this space think about a lot, especially when you get to a place of financial stability and you have that optionality as to what do you go do, right? In terms of figuring out your highest and best use, but also figuring out how to go design those things around what you actually want to do spend your time in, whether that be travel a certain place, whether that be certain types of work, certain types of people that you're around. I think all those things play a big piece in what you want your life to look like and the work that you end up doing because of that.
totally, totally. Um,
So
yep,
yeah,
totally
so
agree.
saying on yeah. No, so saying on your end though, like you built the service company, right? Like you started a company from scratch and built that, and how has that changed like how you think about things, right? Because that is, I think those skills that you build in doing so, right? It's not a linear path in building a company like that. Right? Even though it was super successful, I'm sure it was not a linear or smooth path in doing it. Like what has that taught you about what you want to go do going forward with your time and what you want to focus on, and just learnings that you may have that you can go share with people listening who may want to go start their own thing, whether it be something similar, smaller scale, bigger scale, like whatever it may be. Like what learnings really take away and inputs that you have from someone who started and scaled their own thing really successfully.
Man, we'd need maybe 10 more podcast episodes to decode a lot of this. But what's coming to mind for me, having gone through that, is a building a business from scratch is really, 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 really hard. Um, B, you know, buying a business and scaling it is probably a little less hard. So, what I've learned is I like things to be easier rather than hard. But you only get that experience from going through it. So if I had it to do over again, despite succeeding, I would have taken the path of building something that already had some trajectory. For me, it's speed. So I'm a very impatient person. So I want to see things moving quickly. I want to see things going quickly. And startups do lend themselves to speed. Startups do lend themselves to kind of being all consumptive, but you don't necessarily see you know, seeing the progress. You have to step out and step back and look at, and you know, you kind of, you aren't cash flowing on day one. You're doing the opposite. You're uncash flowing on day one. You're investing. So what I've learned from myself is I want to do a lot of things. And I want the next phase of my career to not be in the operator seat, you know, the one that's, managing and leading and, you know, the quote unquote, the CEO seat. I want to be above the CEO seat. I think it might have been, Sam Zell that first said this. I want to be chairman of everything, CEO of nothing. So I don't want the day to day responsibility, but that might be exactly what somebody who's listening, you know, loves and thrives in. And if, again, if wealth building is the goal, you can be very successful in any path, whether that's being the operator, whether that's being the funder, whether that's raising the capital for it. You know, I think one of the myths of entrepreneurship is you got to know everything. But you know, one of the things I've realized is you got to know what you want. And then you just have to hire, and you have to get really good at delegating and, you know, finding the right person to fill in all the stuff that you either don't know how to do or you don't want to do. And, you know, if there was a secret or a cheat code, that's definitely something I would say stay focused on what you're really good at. And whether it's marketing or sales or finance, you know, you can fill in the pieces with other folks that are more than happy to be in that integrator or that operator seat, or in the other direction, finding you know, somebody who's really good at the vision and, you know, seeing where things can go. So that's what I've learned. I've learned I want to I want to do a lot of things, so I need a lot of partners and a lot of team support.
So how do you balance that, right? Like at times, I'm guilty of it myself too, is a lot of things make sense to do, right? You have the ability of doing a lot of things in terms of time, resources. How do you stay focused on things that drive your life forward, right? Not just your finances, right? Because I'm sure you're in a spot now where you're stable and money may not be the biggest driver of your decisions going forward. I'm sure it's still some piece of it, right? But when you look at how do you go allocate your time and your focus to seeing which improves your life and those around you the most, whether that be a holistic view, a financial view, a happiness view, freedom view, how are you looking at that?
So I'll answer this a couple different ways. Um, I'm now trying to make decisions as best I can on the empirical evidence of my years on Earth for what has been enjoyable and you know what makes the dopamine center fire. And for me, I look at business as a game. So in a business context, I'm trying to do things where I have some sort of intelligence. So the Warren Buffett circle of competence. So I've learned that when I stray outside of that, it doesn't usually work well. So I've tried to stay closer into things that I can understand and in some way, shape, or form, whether that's directly or more likely through connections, have some sort of influence in. Um, Money is not the primary driver. There's a great book that I just read by Andrew Wilkinson. That's the title of it was Barista to Billionaire. He talks about his journey from literally being a barista to literally becoming a billionaire, and it was really interesting to hear that he actually says in part of it that I would rather, I think, if you've made 25 or 50 million, I'd rather be that person than who I am now because there are so many burdens on it. And there was a lot with that book that resonated with me about, it's not just about chasing wealth. And I like spending time with people I want in the places I want. And a lot of that comes back to freedom. And there's trade-offs. I'm guessing that if I were doing, maybe 14 or 12-hour or 16-hour days, uh, more numbers could stack up in the net worth column, but I'm trying to optimize on family time and optimize on fun time. And for me, a huge portion of my time does still go into work and business, but I look at it as fun because I've now learned from all the experience up to date that I don't want to be the CEO. I love the game of money, but it doesn't drive me at this point. But I still love winning. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm still excited to see the scoreboard, but it's nowhere near all consuming.
Yeah, I actually just heard him on a podcast a couple of days. Actually, I think last night I was listening to it, the Money Wise with I believe Sam Parr. He and
Yep.
Andrew kind of talking through just like certain things are worth it and certain things are not worth it financially as well. Like for you, what are a few big things that you may have spent on that are actually worth it, right? Like areas in terms of life, whether it be experiences or things that you're like, okay, this is actually my life got better from doing this, and maybe something that you're just like, I can't believe I was an idiot and bought this.
um, yeah, man. There's a book in here. There's definitely a book of all the stupid things. This in the stupid category. It's the first money I got. The first real money I got out. I went and built a house I still own. That's absolutely beautiful, and I love it, and it's stunning. Um, it didn't bring me over time the joy that I thought it was going to. So it was took 3 or 4 years to build. It was to the nines. It was super modern. And on the far side of it now, it's like the HVAC system is broken, and to redo it, you have to take out all this custom cabinetry, and it's like certainly not an unhigh class problem, but it's like my we chose a marble that the dog can't walk on, or it gets dirty, and then it's in that camp. It's you know spending money on things that wouldn't bring back the value, and we're were sort of so high end. I thought my future self would like it, but did and enjoy it. But at the same time, that money going into the stock market would probably have been worth, 5 to 7x what was put into it, as opposed to putting it into an asset that's probably worth half of what I bought it for. The stuff that's worth it, being in environments that you love. So I absolutely love being up here. You know, the the view is not so bad. So it's it's what, July 16th or 17th. I think it'll get to about 80 degrees. Maybe is a super hot day. Maybe 82. So the environment, but the people you surround yourself with and the environment you're in does make a difference. But it's not like, it's not the $4 billion mansion that you thought it. The a simple sort of beach cottage is doing it. I'd say that the other, like private air travel, like it's kind of frivolous, but completely, there's no, the only sense you can really make of it is if you actually were able to do the deal. There's no way to justify it truly financially. I'm sure Elon Musk is at the level where every second it makes sense, but that makes a difference. It enables you to do things that you might not have been able to fit into your calendar, and it certainly is nice to have the annoyance. But I'd say a lot of the other stuff is just noise, like fancy cars, like don't don't do it for me. So I've over time, I've just sort of indexed on simpler and trying to do stuff that truly brings joy, as opposed to like I have an Apple Watch. I don't have one of I didn't get into watches, and I'm glad kind of glad I didn't get into that bug. So
Yeah, no, it's helpful. Like I think part of it too just goes to the function. I was laughing when you were saying the dogs too. Like my dogs, I've got to be so conscious of like what I get around them because they're just gonna go mess everything up anyway.
yep,
Right. So like you can only go so nice with certain things before it becomes a like weight and a burden of I don't want the dogs on here or jumping on there. Right. So
yep,
like the function utility actually goes further than the quality sometimes, like to a certain point in terms of diminishing returns there. But
for
no, I
sure.
think that's
There's
super
one there's
helpful.
one more actually that I would share. All the stuff to buy back your time, to whether that makes you more effective, whether it makes you money or whether it just brings back your time to give you time with family. Those are some of the first things that I would invest in. And it likely will do both. So it's the reference one of them earlier, but the finding an incredibly capable assistant. Um, for those that aren't in a big corporate that can just sort of spend on it, those little things, really do make a difference. So that's the place I would really advocate once you've kind of gotten out of that first echelon of, yeah, I'm enjoying the good life, and you should enjoy the good life for a little while, but then it just, you know, time is what's most important.
So on that note too, like what are things that you've done to actually buy back your time? Like the assistant, I think is a great one, right? To help manage your calendar, your email, right? To go handle sort of administrative type stuff. But for you, like what else or kind of what people have you hired or would you hire to go help free up more of your time to either work on deals, spend with family, or whatever it is that you want to go prioritize that time?
Yeah, it depends on what your life situation is. So different people's lives may have different things, but the first thing, there's this book by, I think it's Dan Martell. It's literally called Buy Back Your Time. And the
Yep.
first thing he recommends is go hire an assistant and delegate your email and your calendar. So literally, like, give them your login to your email and your calendar. And there's a process to do it. So it's not just like it works magically out of the gate. But the more you can, you know, it's just a little bit thinking a little bit differently of, do I really have to do this, or can somebody else do this? And it's not out of laziness, it's out of leverage, and it's also out of desire. I'd rather be spending time with family than, you know, like messing with trying to figure out how to calendar four people that need to be on a call. It's not, there's somebody else who can do it. And there's this company, I've not used them yet, but I'm excited to try it. There's this company, Athena, that's getting a lot of buzz recently, that hires, MBA caliber people who are offshore. I think you're working on too. I should probably promote your EA services other than what I just said. So feel free to edit this out and insert your own.
You're good. No, no,
But
no worries though.
no, I mean you can find. So some of the things I've done are there, like done. I've had a lot of personal assistance. It may seem completely frivolous, but and I've gone from the way overdoing it side of having a full time house manager to the dialed back version of I don't want somebody in my house all the time. It's
Sure.
somebody to sort of run errands and clean. Like we're back to the simpler land.
No, very cool. Yeah, I totally get it. Like the simple ones, you've got the assistants, you've got like laundry, cleaning. I'm not sure what kind of dogs you have, but mine shed just pour hair out of
Yep.
them.
Yep.
I think the next thing, like looking at serious, I think would make a big impact is just the cooking piece of it, right? Like
Yep.
I can cook for survival, but it's not pretty, and you just have
Yep.
like sorted out healthy food. It makes a huge difference. Um, so right now, I think it's like you seem like someone who has a lot of clarity on just what you want to do, what you want to focus on, what brings you, happiness and pride and like fulfillment. So kind of going forward, like what's next for you? What are you focused on now?
Yeah. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but it's buying and building service businesses. So I found that the places I really love are seeing what something can be and helping close the gap. And what really drives me is helping the entrepreneur get there and unlock whatever they need to unlock to go from here to there. And some of the most fun I've had has been with you folks where there isn't even necessarily an economic incentive, but it's just the mentoring of like unlocking seeing these wheels turn and these machinations. But it's where I'm headed and where I'm going is buying and building service businesses. So helping to do roll ups in the service business sector, and so that's one area. So some of the things that we talked about a little bit ago are super interesting. And then on the other side, on the real estate side, it's doing these land subdivide deals. Taking a lot of time. They're pretty cool because they're super lucrative. You can take this huge piece of land, you then add value to it by dividing it into parts, and then you can sell it for. It's kind of like the opposite of multifamily. You take something big and you chunk it up, kind of buying and selling off the parts. So that's been a big focus. I don't know beyond that. There's a number of other things we haven't really explored or talked about here, and I don't know where they'll fit in, but those fit into my dabbling bucket, and maybe they'll grow, and maybe they'll become a past idea that seemed fun, but didn't do it.
Cool. Well, hey, before we hop off here, what advice do you have to someone looking to get started in the entrepreneurship world?
Yeah, so it depends on where you are in your journey, and in your trajectory. Like, what age are you, and what level of experience do you have? So if you're sort of 17, 18, 19, you don't have a lot of work experience. I would say in any direction, just get in the game. So that's kind of advice number one. Um, it goes in two directions. So if you're somebody who's been the COO of come up with a service business here, COO of I'll just call bring up HVAC. You've done the work for somebody else, but you want to do it on your own. Just go buy something, or go do exactly what you're doing on your own, and you might be to the level where you can take the plunge. And I guess that would be more for a plumber if they were taking the plunge, but you would go buy something. If you're not quite ready to do it, go work for somebody. Go find a small business to work for, some way, shape, perform. There's no better teacher than experience. So if you're ready to dive in, do it. Don't do it in a way that's going to be catastrophic to your life. I'm a huge fan of, if the situation allows itself, keep the W-2 and keep the cash flow going as long as you can, because the number one thing that will kill your ability to be successful is just longevity. Realize that it's going to take, my rule is, if it's a startup, it's going to take 4 times as long and it's going to cost 4 times as much. My rule of, maybe buying a company is it's probably going to cost twice as much and take twice as long. But if you've got the drive and the hunger, really ask yourself, if you have it, then just do it. Like, get off your butt and figure out how to do it. There's tons of content out there for how, but maybe this is the impetus to just get started.
Cool. And before we hop here, what's the best way for the listeners to reach out to you?
So my Instagram is going to be pathetic. So when you go on and see I've got like 6 followers, you'll think I might be a joke. But I have not focused at all yet on building out the social brand. It's at A Shumaker on Instagram is where you can find me that way. And I don't look at Instagram very frequently, but I will. You can find me there. I think I'm gonna do more stuff on social. So maybe it'll grow, maybe it won't. We'll see.
You've actually done enough stuff that would actually go warrant it, right? So I think other people go some like this contorted route at time where they go try and pump all those content out versus actually doing the work. I think you've actually done the work now. So sharing your story, I think, would be received pretty well.
Yeah, I hope so. I guess we'll see. Actually, working on it.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, hey, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you for tuning into the Fully Funded Show hosted by Sam Silverman. If you are enjoying the content, let's take your journey further in the Fully Funded Mastermind. The Fully Funded Mastermind offers more than just insights. It's a mastermind community designed to solve the real challenge of raising capital. By joining, you gain direct access to strategies, coaching, and a network dedicated to turning your financial goals into achievements. Don't let capital raising be a barrier to your success. Visit fullyfunded.capital to explore how our mastermind community can pave your way to financial growth.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fully Funded Show. If you enjoyed today's insights, hit follow. Share with your investing pals and drop us a review. Connect with us on social media for bonus content. Your success is our mission. Keep those funds flowing. See you next time.